Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Good evening, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. We have a special meeting tonight. I'm going to ask the clerk to announce the meeting and call the roll.
A special session is being held on Thursday, December 1st, 2016 at 5 o'clock p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for a legislative briefing and dinner. Roll call. Markley.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Walker. Walker.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said Walters. Here.
Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Holland.
Here. So tonight we have our annual meeting with our legislators in Wyandotte County with the commission to go over our legislative agenda. And I just want to start off by thanking all of you here for your tremendous work on behalf of our community in Topeka. Topeka has been a tough place for Wyandotte County and for Democrats the last several years, and we really appreciate the work that you have done, the yeoman's task that you all have done to hold the line on issues that are important to our community. And really, I can't say thank you enough to each of you for that hard work that you do on our behalf. There are a few who are not able to be here tonight, and they've called in and let us know that they have other commitments. But those of you who are present tonight, I really appreciate. What I'd like to do is start off by having each of us just go around and introduce ourselves and where you serve, what area you serve in. And you might not just do the number, you might do the area, because I will confess I've not memorized the numbers, but knowing everyone here, I kind of know where you serve already, but I think for those watching and for everyone else, that'd be very helpful. So I'll start clear at the end with Commissioner Johnson. If you would start with just an introduction, we'll just go around and work our way around the table.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Harold Johnson. I serve as the Commissioner for District Number 4. I like to say it's right in the heart of the city, but looking at the map right now, that's not quite true, but it's probably the geographically smallest district. I think me and Commissioner Mugia debate on that, but I know if I'm not number 1, I'm number 2 in terms of the smallest district geographically in Wyandotte County, so thank you.
So I'm Brian McKiernan. I serve Commission District 2. Welcome to District 2. You're in it right now. So it's from State Line on the east to 18th Street on the west, State Avenue on the north, to the Kansas River.
Do you
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't quite understand the directions. I'm Senator Pat Petty. I represent the Senate 6th District, which encompasses Argentine, Rosedale, Armourdale, Turner. It takes in a good, all the way out to Schlitterbahn along State Avenue, and I have all the south side and all the way to 7th Street, actually. And then all around the St. Peter's area as well, St. Peter's Cathedral. And then a small portion of Johnson County from Schweitzer to Foster, from Johnson Drive to County Line. I could be pretty specific about that, it's smaller. So I'm happy to be here since I've been here before.
I'm Melissa Bynum, the at-large District 1 Commissioner. My district covers Commission Districts 1, 4, 5, and 8, which is basically the northern half of the county.
Representative Stan Fraunfelder, 37th District. It's basically south central Wyandotte County, 73rd and State to 20th and State Avenue. It mingles down the County Line Road. Thank you.
Hal Walker, 2nd District at large, includes 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th commission districts elected at large.
I'm Representative Luis Ruiz. I represent the 31st District, which encompasses Rosedale, all the southeastern part of Wyandotte County, State Line, County Line, and then west, north to the river, and then to the west part of Argentine. I'll go up the hill, circle around part of Maple Hill, and go to the west there and south. And I just acquired that district after redistricting. Representative Fraunfelder and I butt up against each other.
Geographically, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Mark Holland, Mayor of Kansas City, Kansas Unified Government, Wyandotte County.
Gordon Criswell, County Administrator's Office.
Thank you, Angel. Kathy Wolfmore, I'm the representative from Western Wyandotte County, so I have all of Piper. I go into approximately 67th Street and don't go any south of State.
Angela Markley, I'm Commission District 6, which serves Turner and part of Argentine.
I'm Commissioner Ann Murguia, District 3, and my district covers the rest of Argentine that Commissioner Markley does not cover, and all of Rosedale.
Jim Walters, District 7, the southwestern corner of the county, including Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, up to Parallel and into approximately 78th Street, so it includes the Legends and Slitterbahn, and about a third of my district is in Kansas City, Kansas.
Mike Kane, District 5, and a lot of people refer to it the Piper area. That is not true at all. It actually starts at 72nd Parallel, works out to 75th, over to State, out to 86th Street, back over. It picks up back on 75th and Leavenworth Road across from Washington High School, all the way out to 83rd. And just as you get past Lake, everything north and west of there.
Good evening. I'm Gail Townsend, representing District 1, traditional northeast, upper northeast end of Wyandotte County, KCK, bordered to the east, basically by the Missouri River and Kansas River, to the south, parallel, generally speaking, is the boundary, bordered by District 4, to the north, again, the river. Proud to have Fairfax in that area. And to the west, District 8 is our neighbor, and it extends as far out as a little sliver of 62nd Street. So it's a pretty big area physically.
Jane Philbrook, District 8, and I'm kind of the middle of the road from the river to river, and just west of District 4 and southwest of District 1, and then I go out, depending on how crooked the dog's leg is, anywhere between 72nd Street to 83rd Street. So I'm the one picking up the middle with that gerrymandering. Thank you.
All right, Mike, we'll turn it over to you. Oh, Commissioner
Yes.
Curtis came in. Representative Curtis.
Thank you. Sorry to be a little bit late. I had a prior appointment that I had to stop by. So anyway, I'm Pam Curtis, and I represent District 32, river to river, State Avenue to about 28th Street. My district pretty much mirrors Commissioner Brian McKiernan's district.
Terrific. Thank you. Well, welcome again to everyone, and appreciate your coming out. What I want to do is ask Mike Taylor, who we all know. Mike Taylor serves as our communication person as well as lobbyist in Topeka, and to go through our legislative program, not in its entirety, but in highlight form, and then open it up really to dialogue, well, both question and dialogue. If you all have insight, the representatives and senators have insight in terms of how we can better present something, any input that you have on trends that you see coming, other things we need to be aware of, and then just some dialogue about how we can best work together on the issues for the betterment of our whole community. So again, thank you, and Mr. Taylor, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all of you. Thank you for being here. I want to give a quick little overview of the situation we're looking at in the 2017 legislature. The elections changed the legislative landscape. There's no doubt about that. We'll have 59 new lawmakers due to either retirements or the result of the elections in the primary and the general election. Clearly, there will be a more moderate makeup in the legislature than we've seen in the past few years. In the Kansas House, in 2016, the last session, there were 97 Republicans and 28 Democrats. As a result of the elections in 2017, we will see 85 Republicans and 40 Democrats. So a big gain in the Democratic caucus. And I would say, and there could be some debate about this, but I'm just kind of guesstimating that as many as 30 of the newly elected Republicans could be considered moderates. And I say that because many of them ran on a platform opposing past decisions of the legislature or Governor Brownback's tax cuts and that kind of thing. So if you add the potentially 30 Republicans with the 40 Democrats, that becomes a majority that could, if they can work together, and I don't think they will on all issues, but if they can work together and create a coalition, could actually make some major changes in the courses we've seen. In the Senate, less dramatic change. There were 32 Republicans and 8 Democrats. In the last session, there are now 31 Republicans and 9 Democrats. The Senate will be a lot more conservative than the House, but somewhat more moderate than I think in past years. There are signs, and we'll see how this carries out, that leadership in the Senate is showing signs of wanting to challenge Governor Brownback on some key issues. For example, the Senate has said, we're going to develop our own budget and present it, as opposed to just dealing with the governor's budget. So we'll see how all that plays out. Both bodies have to still do their leadership elections. So there's a very large freshman class. There'll be new leadership in the House for sure, because the former speaker is retired. And there'll be a number of new committee chairs. So in terms of what I do over there, I've got to wait and see kind of who gets what role on what committees and how that all plays out. Democrats, because of the change in the election, will increase the number of members that they have on committees, which means I think Wyandotte County legislators will play some bigger roles, or we'll have more Wyandotte County folks on some of those committees. Difficult issues that the legislature will face. School finance will be a major issue. We're still all waiting and sort of guessing when the Supreme Court will hand down a decision about school finance and what may or may not need to be done there. Some folks say that the court may order the legislature to spend $400 to $500 million more a year on K through 12 education. Speculation at this point, we don't really know. The bottom line is, if that's the case, that money doesn't exist, so we're not sure how they would pay that. Budget and taxes will be a big issue. I'll get more into budget in a minute, but we know that through the election campaigns and some of the people that won, the budget shortfalls and discussion about the tax plans that have been in place since 2012 are a major topic. Leadership and the Legislative Coordinating Council anticipated that putting a budget together will be so difficult that they extended the statutory 90-day session to 100 days. They've already changed that. So we know that we'll be there at least 100 days. The longest session was 114 days, and that was with a veto or wrap-up session. So I'm thinking, I'm not planning a vacation for June at all, just to let you know. So let's look at the budget situation. The new revenue estimates that just happened in November, they're projecting now a decrease in the revenues, so a $350 million shortfall in the 2017 budget year. Keep in mind that the state budget goes from July 1st to June 30th, so we're in December already, so by the time the session starts, there'll only be 6 months left in the budget year, and there'll be $350 million to have to make up. They'll work on a 2-year budget is what we're anticipating the governor will propose. So by 2018, the shortfall will be $582 million. So that's a lot of dollars to make up. And we're not sure exactly. The governor has been very quiet about what he'll propose. He said he will not unveil his budget until January. He had the option to do a rescission bill or allotments. He's indicated he's not doing that, so he's basically going to wait till the new legislature gets there and say, here's what I'm proposing, you all deal with it and fix it. So every agency, though, has been asked to submit a round of what it would look like for 5% in budget cuts. And I point that out because it doesn't just affect the state, and we've known for years that when different departments cut their budgets, it trickles down to the local government, and we end up picking up the cost. One quick example is what happened with aging, and you all as commissioners approved an additional, if I remember right, $80,000 in our local government budget this year out of our local tax dollars to pick up costs for the Area Agency on Aging, so that we didn't have seniors who are left unserved because of the state cuts. So it trickles its way down. The Senate, as I mentioned, has said it will write its own budget. And we'll see how that all plays out, because it could very well be in conflict with what Governor Brownback proposes. I want to point this out because this is a pretty well thought of and respected survey that's done every year out of Fort Hays State University, the Docking Institute for Public Affairs, and it's generally pretty much on target. So this was done before the elections in November, but 70% of Kansans they surveyed, and it is a statistically valid survey, said Kansas is on the wrong path. 74% were dissatisfied with the job Governor Brownback's doing. 57% were dissatisfied with the job the Kansas legislature was doing. 54% were dissatisfied with the job President Obama was doing. Now, let me just point out, in case you missed that, in red state Republican Kansas, 74% were unhappy with our Republican governor, 54% were unhappy with our Democrat president. 53% were satisfied with the job the Supreme Court was doing, and that was reflected in the fact that all of the justices were retained. I put these in because these are issues that all affect our UG legislative program. 62% of the people surveyed favor expanding Medicaid, or known in Kansas as CanCare, which has been a priority issue for us, and you'll see in a minute continues to be. 61% favor closing the LLC tax loophole. That's the measure that allows 330,000 businesses to not pay any tax at all. And 62% favor some kind of training for concealed carry, which was, of course, eliminated in the last session of legislature. So let's get to our priority issues. We've had this on our agenda for a number of years. I put it number one this year because I think there's actually an opportunity to make this happen. There's been a huge groundswell of support from a number of groups, but the unified government has for several years now supported expansion of Medicaid. It would help thousands of Wyandotte County residents in getting insurance. Now, we've done a great job after the Affordable Care Act came into place of signing up people for insurance. In fact, we're getting some attention for the great job we did. There are still thousands of people who don't qualify, and expanding Medicaid or CanCare would help do that. So we have been for 3 or 4 years now part of a coalition working to make that happen. We will continue to be. And it looks like politically in the State House, there's a chance that that will pass. I mean, even a committee chair from the past who wouldn't allow a bill to go to the floor, the speaker who wouldn't, has said, I think it will happen, and I think if it gets to the floor, it'll actually pass. The wild card in this is with the result of our presidential elections because of what President-elect Trump is saying. So I'm thinking at the state level, if we can get this done fairly quickly, the Congress is going to take a while to repeal and replace or repeal or whatever it is they decide to do with the Affordable Care Act. So my view is we still work to make the expansion happen in Kansas, and then we'll just see what happens at the federal level. But it'll take a long time at the federal level. All right, the infamous property tax lid. So there's a couple of different positions here. On our priority agenda, what we've decided to work with the other cities in the state through the League of Kansas Municipalities and the Association of Counties is to replace the current election process for the tax lid with a protest petition. The election process simply doesn't work. It was ill-conceived, and of course this is a measure that had no actual bill at first, no real hearings. It was kind of done on the fly on the floor of the Senate originally. We would love to see the whole thing repealed, which is why I put that last line there. Politically, realistically, we're not sure we don't think that's probably going to happen, repealing it before it's ever actually gone into effect. But it will affect our next year budget that we do because it goes into effect January 1st. So we decided to be a little more practical and simply try to replace the election process with a protest petition. We're also working already on adding some additional exemptions to the bill. For example, one thing we tried to get in initially that didn't make it was personnel costs, or benefits. For example, health insurance premiums. We said, look, we don't control those, and we should be able to exempt those from the tax lid. That didn't pass. We're going to try to do that again, as well as a couple of others. So Costs that we can't control, we don't think we ought to be constrained in those terms. So that's going to be a major issue, and we've got, it's not just a UG issue, it's a statewide issue that we're working with all the other cities and counties on. Representative Fraunfelter's favorite topic, abandoned housing, one that we've worked together for years on, and actually got the legislation passed last year by large margins in the House and the Senate, only to see it vetoed by the governor for reasons I've talked to a lot of you about it. I won't go into all the details of that, but he vetoed it. Well, I'll just say it for pretty bogus reasons. And we're going to try it again. And there's already meetings and reintroducing that bill and trying to get that measure done. One of the things that we added at the League of Municipalities, the counties, and in ours is we want to expedite the process, and it's part of, it fits well into a major effort we're making at the UG, you know, SOAR or the blight remediation effort, but we kept hearing about property rights. Well, what about some of these property rights? Well, we decided to just be very blunt about it and add, well, what about the property rights of surrounding homeowners? Yeah, okay, owning property is a right. I've argued in testimony that owning property also carries responsibilities with that right. And there are people who clearly don't meet that responsibility. We went on a tour a couple of years ago in Topeka, in a very nice neighborhood in Topeka, but there was one house where the owner had died, the grown children were living across the country, weren't interested, the house was falling in on itself, and it was a blight on the neighborhood. And when we took legislators on a tour of that neighborhood, several neighbors came out and said, well, what about my rights? Because I'm keeping my house up. And these were homes that were, you know, in the $200,000 to $300,000 range. So we're making a big point about the rights of surrounding property owners and trying to get that stressed. Tax appeals. We support procedural changes to the tax appeals process that are balanced and sensible for both the taxpayer and the county government. Number of changes were made in legislation last year and the year prior that are not sensible, they're not workable, and they really put county governments and our appraisers at a real disadvantage in terms of trying to appraise the real value of properties. So we're going to work kind of systematically to make some incremental changes in some of those rules. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds, too detailed and really boring to go into, but there were changes made that don't make sense and really allow property owners to appeal and use basis that aren't fair and put us at a real disadvantage in making our case. Oh, prevailing wage. The unified government has, and always will, I think, support paying prevailing wage on our public works projects and our economic development projects when we give tax incentives of some kind, star bonds or other kinds of tax incentives. That ability for us to do that was stripped 3 years ago, I think now, despite a very hard-fought fight, and all the members of this delegation joined us in the effort to oppose that, and it was really a hard-fought fight. We're going to try again. I think given the change in the makeup of the legislature and some other efforts I know that are kind of afoot, I think we've got a shot at trying to get that back. I will admit that I didn't get a lot of help on that fight from my other city colleagues because we're the only local government in the state of Kansas that required prevailing wage. We did get the League of Municipalities to change their platform. They always said we oppose mandates requiring prevailing wage. We got the language changed to say we oppose mandates that require or prohibit the paying of prevailing wage. So if we get some kind of a bill in a hearing, the league will be there representing, supporting us, saying, you know, let them do it if they want to do it. And I've argued that that's the sense of our community, it fits our community, and we ought to be allowed to do it. You shouldn't get yourselves involved in that as a state legislature. So that's going to be a fight that I hope we can make some headway on and actually win. Weapons and firearms. Well, so the legislature, we're about less regulation, less intrusion in people's lives. Legislature decided that they would engage themselves in our own personnel policies and those of all local governments in the state and tell us that we can't prohibit our employees from carrying guns while they're on the clock. We fought hard against that we lost that, and so there will be efforts to try to get that repealed. We just believe that in trying to run a workplace, whether it's our fleet maintenance garage or our code inspectors, that if they're not required to carry a gun, police officers, security guards, that we ought to be able to set that priority when they're on our clock, and the legislature shouldn't preempt that. So we're going to try to make that incremental change in the concealed carry laws. There's going to be, by the way, a huge effort by the universities to try to change, because starting July 1st, every college kid in every frat or sorority or dorm is going to be able to carry a gun on campuses in Kansas. And the Board of Regents and others have a real issue with that in terms of the safety, and so there'll be a real push. So we'll see where that goes. But our piece is simply to say, just stay out of our own local personnel policy and let us set our own rules for our employees. The tax system. We've never really weighed in on this before, but and it's a lot of words, but basically what it says is we're urging the legislature to reconsider the imbalance in the Kansas tax system by returning to the long-established philosophy of balancing revenue from income, sales, and property taxes. That's known a long time as the three-legged stool. And what the legislature did several years ago was they cut that one leg off, the income tax leg, so the stool has gone like this, right? We've really stayed out of that in the past because it was a state issue, but it's cost us millions of dollars as a local government because of the trickle-down effects of the state losing that revenue. So we're proposing that we actually have a policy, so when there is a proposal, and there will be several, I think, to look at the tax system, that we can actually, I've got the authority with endorsement from this commission to weigh in on that and look at how it affects local governments. That's the biggest thing that we're talking about, is they did that without really looking at the effect on local governments. And the effect was they just either cut services that we had to pick up the cost for, or they cut funding that we traditionally got. So it did affect us, and I'm proposing that we weigh in on that issue and say, look, you need to consult with us as well. And I'm hoping, in conjunction with this, a number of us are hoping that with the change in the legislature, that we get back to a point where the state government views local government as a partner in providing public services and making it a great state, and not the enemy, which has been what we've dealt with for the past 4 years. I wanted to talk about this one. We're off our priorities, it says priorities, but I wanted to talk about a few other key issues that I think that are a hot button here, and that one of them is casino gaming. I wanted to reinforce with all of you the unified government's position regarding the Woodlands. Our official position last year and again this year will be that we support measures to assist the Woodlands in reopening as a gaming facility, so long as the Woodlands provides benefits to the local community which are on par with the benefits provided by the Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway. That means negotiating a development agreement with us, paying the same share to the local government that the casino has to pay, because they cut that in half in their proposal. Perhaps making charitable contributions, but at least sitting down and talking with us. And we know that dollars won't be the same, but we want to make sure that at least it's on par in terms of the kind of things that are required. So that's our official position. And we made a number of attempts last year to get the new owner of the Woodlands to sit down with us and talk about his plans and development agreement. It never happened. We'll continue that. I'm not sure there'll actually be legislation again this year. There may well be. We want to be prepared for that. One thing that I almost forgot, and I'm adding this because it will be a discussion, is the Star Bond legislation expires June 30th of 2017. So there will be a bill there'll have to be a bill to renew Star Bonds, or it'll go out of statute and Star Bonds will no longer be an available tool. We've obviously used them very successfully here in Wyandotte County, and we think that option should continue. And so we will be weighing in support of continuing Star Bonds, but continuing them in a way that's sensible and reasonable and allows local communities the options they need to make it work. There are some Star Bond districts in the state that have been not as successful. I had a conversation the other day with the Secretary of Commerce, who said that he uses the Legends and Village West as the crown jewel example of how Star Bonds should work in the state and how they were designed to work. And so I think we'll have a lot of support for continuing that. But I wanted to bring that up, that will be an issue that we'll be supporting. This one is there's an kind of a grassroots effort, but asset forfeiture. Our police department's very concerned about this because there are a number of proposals out there. In fact, 3 bills are already pre-filed that would change the way we can keep assets. So if we, being blunt, if we bust a drug dealer and we find, $100,000 in cash in his car and a bunch of drugs, we confiscate that and can keep it and eventually put that back into our treasury or use it for police sources. There are a number of changes that want to change the way that would work. We're concerned about that, and so we will be opposing efforts that one of the proposals would be that the state gets to take all that money and then we'll dole it back out to the locals as we see fit. And our argument is, no, if our police do that bust and we arrest that drug dealer, as an example, and we confiscate that money, we should be able to keep it and use it to help offset the course of that enforcement. You'll hear a lot about this, so that's why I'm bringing it up. The other one is there are going to be some efforts to change the way municipal courts operate. One, we fought this battle before and won it, but it's going to come back. It has to do with the authority that local judges have in municipal courts to actually set the operating rules of the court and to set the decisions in whether bail bondsmen can work in our court or not work in our court, or how the bail bonds procedures work. We think that we should still be able to control that on the local level, and so that's going to be an issue that I wanted to point out to you all as well, because it will become an issue again. We're different than district courts in the kind of cases that we try. We try misdemeanors, not felonies, so we think that the rules, we ought to be able to set those rules. So those are kind of the highlights, the priorities, and a few of the highlights. And now, while we have time, I would just open it up for any questions you may have of me, or certainly invite discussion amongst yourselves.
All right, Representative Curtis.
Thank you, Mike. I just have a question on the civil asset forfeiture position that you all have. It was my understanding that part of that was those assets being seized and then before a person is actually convicted. So you all are not opposed to that part of legislation?
We actually are proposing, we support the current law, which allows us to seize those assets and not necessarily give them back. We're concerned that because a conviction could take years, and so what happens to those funds in the meantime? And there's concern by the police that if you just turn them back over, that they suddenly get re-laundered and disappear back to the drug dealers or the cartel or the gang that had them. The person then later gets convicted, and you're like, okay, we want those assets back. And they're like, well, they're gone. They're in Colombia now or wherever. So that's our concern.
What happens to the person that is found not convicted and found not guilty, and their assets are then gone? That's the issue that's been brought forward. So.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. And I don't have a real detailed answer to give you right now.
Thank you.
Because I'm going to bring the police chief over to testify when this issue comes up. So.
Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, when I was talking to some of the legislators last year about the prevailing wage, they said something about like home rule. You know, that let the municipality make that decision on their own. And I think language-wise, as Representative Curtis is looking at me, I think that would be more more palatable for the ones that opposed it last year, because they're not saying they agreed with it. They're just saying you guys make your own decisions. So when you guys start working on that, I'd like to know about it, because I'd like to be in the committee meeting.
That's an interesting strategy, because, and I would need to check with our legal staff, but the way the Home Rule Amendment works is if the statute is inconsistent, if it doesn't apply to all cities equally, my understanding is the way they passed it, though, they applied it to all local governments, so it would not give us the option to opt out of it through a home rule, but.
Representative Fraunfelter.
Thank you. When we worked that on the floor, there was amendments brought to leave it up to the individual county or city to do what they wanted. This was a rare ran through by one construction company who was upset that was not getting his due share in Wyandotte County because he didn't want to pay the wages. I think there's a possibility the House could hear it and move it, but your problem's going to be in the Senate. Because, well, there'll be a definitely problem there between what goes on with the leader of that Senate race and their family members.
I understand. And that's what actually happened before, is we actually got the issue dealt with in the House, and it was when it got to the Senate that provision got put back in and passed, so. But I'm hoping that it won't be just our fight, that there'll actually be some labor unions that want to help us, and maybe some other folks that want to help us, as well as the league, because I got them to change their language so that they would be there to support us and say, you know, again, it's a local control issue. If that fits the nature of that community, why not let them do it?
Yes.
One of the items that wasn't discussed was the immigration issues. We had several bills come through last year, and possibly we circumvented some of these on the sanctuary cities.
Yes.
We defeated the amendment to repeal the in-state tuition. But right now, we're looking at I think you made a statement about before the Congress can come in and mix things up with the new administration. What do you see this local government's role in helping the state identify areas that are sensitive to business needs, health needs, you know, educational needs for our people who are already here, and versus circumventing ICE coming in to pull people out of our community? Has there been any discussion along those lines?
There has been, and actually, we do have a position under the community development piece about we oppose state immigration enforcement measures because they place unreasonable and expensive burdens on local government. For 5 years now, I've worked with I forgot the name of it, the Business Owners for Sensible Immigration Reform. It's Allie Devine's group and a number of the others. I became really the only local government person working with them, because as I read the bills that have been introduced by our our current Secretary of State, I realized that the cost burdens of all of that fell onto local governments. So I became very active in that coalition with the endorsement of this commission, and we've been able to successfully stop all those bills that he's tried. I think he may be reinvigorated and may bring those bills back. We'll still be there to fight them, because some of the bills, you know, it affects everything from not just our jails and what our police departments have to do, but our health department and the services that we give through our health department, trying to verify citizenship for our prenatal clinic, for example. So the other thing that we proposed some proactive legislation was that we enact a system of state-based worker visas that would be outside the federal government, but and there's legal authority to do it. We've never really followed through with that, but I will tell you that the debate on this is very interesting, because Western Kansas is very much opposed to everything that Secretary of State Chris Kobach has proposed. It will kill the ag economy in Kansas if these kind of measures come in. It did it in Georgia. It did it in Alabama. The governor's aware of that, and so there's going to be a very interesting debate there. That's one of the reasons these bills have never advanced. So, but in our community, we're almost, 30% Hispanic. It would affect thousands of our residents. So unless my commission tells me differently, we're on the side to fight any of those kind of anti-immigration measures.
Well, and to really emphasize keeping families together. I mean, we have families with some with documents, some without documents. The idea of deporting the parents and leaving the children under SRS care is crazy. Deporting half the kids and not the other half. I mean, there's just breaking up families is not what this country is about. Right. And I think finding some reasonable access, a path to work visas, a path to citizenship, really is the path that we need. Obviously, we have an administration that has said they oppose all of that. Now, what actually comes to pass nationally, we don't know. But we want to be sure on the local level to be advocating for our people and for our families.
And Mayor, if I may, I understand that you had a meeting with the new Mexican consul.
I did.
And he's willing to partner with any local government statewide, because he has Missouri, Kansas, and parts of Oklahoma, just what we're talking about today, and using his office as a resource to people to ascertain IDs, visas, and start working along. He in turn is real fearful of what's going to happen after the inauguration in January. So I think it's incumbent upon us as a state and the UG to try and get the information out, because there is, I don't know if he gave you information that can be put on the websites that people can read, and also to our local schools, El Centro, Donnelly, JUCO, disseminate that information to make sure people know that they have access to, I wouldn't say, it would be a good secure way for information to help them out when it comes to like being fearful of ICE, being fearful of local governments coming in. I know because when I think Representative Yoder, Congressman Yoder was getting federal funds and being named Johnson County, one of the cities there is a sanctuary city.
Right.
And so we're looking at those also that type of situation as well.
Right, and I'm keeping an eye on that federally, this whole thing about there actually is no definition of a sanctuary city. So we're kind of waiting to see, but I would think, I was honestly, when that story came out, and it was a little bit bogus in the factual basis of it, but that we weren't actually named as one, just given the nature of our population. We weren't, but Johnson County was, which very much upset their sheriff because he said that they clearly were not. So we're watching that closely, but I want to assure you, Representative, I've been, again, with the permission of this commission, very engaged in the immigration coalition in Topeka, working with those groups to block all of this.
Thank you.
Anything else on immigration? If not, Commissioner Johnson, then Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask Mike and maybe some of our friends in the legislature, what is the general mindset with regards to the expansion of Medicaid rather, in the state? Is it let's move forward, or is it let's wait? And if it is to move forward, then my second question would be, has the governor's mindset changed any relative to that?
No, Representative, go ahead. I will just say that everything I'm hearing and from the groundswell that's happened, I think the change from absolutely no to it's very possible is kind of where we are right now. But
yeah, I think initially after the November election and President-elect Trump's feelings with regard to Medicaid expansion, I think caused everyone to take a step back for a moment. But then from what I understand, the Hospital Association, the foundations across the state of Kansas are working very hard, and they say we are moving full speed ahead. We can't afford to wait. If he is going to do something different, it serves us much better to at least be one of the states that has already passed Medicaid. So I think for a moment there was a stutter step, but I think it's full speed ahead. And I don't think the governor has changed his mind. There's been no indication whatsoever that he has, unfortunately.
I will say that since the enrollment period under the ACA reopened in November, 25,000 additional Kansans have signed up for insurance through the exchange. So there clearly is support. And I would just point out, politically, if I'm in Congress and there are 25 million Americans who are getting insurance because of this program, I would be hard-pressed to vote to take it away from them.
Well, we've been able, in Kansas City, Kansas alone, because we have 5% of the state's population and 10% of the state's uninsured, to take our uninsured rate down from 26% down to 18%. It's the last number I saw, 18 or 19%. Right. I mean, we've nearly a third of the people in Kansas City, Kansas that have not have insurance under this program. We've had a very aggressive enrollment process with Enroll Wyandotte, the Community Health Council, and Healthy Communities Wyandotte. It's been a very successful program to get the health care into the hands of people that need it the most. So it's a critical issue for our community, because expansion of Medicaid could cut the number of uninsured in Wyandotte County in half. And it's a goal that we need to reach. So, all right, Senator Petty.
Thank you. I just want a clarification. So on the property tax lid, and I will say, since I, share that portion of Johnson County, that I earlier this week was at a meeting with the Johnson County Commission, and the property tax lid repeal is their number one issue. Not, in fact, not a protest petition, but the repeal. That's their number one issue. So I just want clarification here. So the unified government's position is go for the protest petition, but really we want the repeal.
We fully support repeal of the whole thing. And there was a lot of discussion about that at the League of Municipalities, Association of Counties, and with various local government representatives. I think the conclusion was trying to repeal a law before it's even gone into effect is probably going to be difficult. We would love to see that. We would love to have the whole thing repealed. But then we took a more practical approach and said, all right, if that can't happen, let's at least make it workable. And I've been asking a few attorneys, like, what happens if the legislature passes a law that is so badly construed and dysfunctional that it can't even be applied? Can you just ignore it? So I'm waiting for an attorney opinion on that, because this law can't work the way it was written. If we could get it repealed, that's what we would fully support. But again, we kind of put down more incremental steps, thinking we might be more successful in getting that done.
And just to follow up with that, so I know in Johnson County, to do an election is $1 million. What's the cost in
About $250,000.
Well, and the other piece too, the state did not apply that to themselves. The increase in the sales tax did not go to a popular vote, but they want us to go to a popular vote in order to do our elected duty. But for the state to do their elected duty, they can raise taxes all they want without a popular vote. It certainly doesn't make any sense on that level. And we do have a representative democracy in this country where we elect local leaders to make the decisions about our mill levies. And it's going to hurt rural Kansas much more than it even will the cities, because we have such a large budget and a diversified stream of income. But it's a big hit to us as well, and really an inappropriate, to use the language of the legislature, government overreach.
Yes. Well, and quite honestly, I've been to several different seminars on this. No one from some of the best-known appraisers in the state to state officials at the Revenue Department have any clue how to actually implement this tax lid. And the Department of Revenue said, we're not even going to send guidance to local governments until at least May or June of 17. Well, we would have to declare an election by July 1st before we've even approved a budget in order to meet the election schedule. It's totally unworkable. So we're hoping that more reasonable minds will come together in this session and we can get that fixed.
I want to say one other thing about that, which would be ammunition for you all as we talk about the tax lid. Wyandotte County, the total taxable valuation of our county is $1 billion. The total taxable valuation of Johnson County is $8 billion. So every mill we levy, we get $1 million. For every mill they levy, they get $8 million. So their taxes are half ours, but they're spending double per capita what we are on their residents for the amenities that have made Johnson County, Johnson County. If this tax lid had been put on Johnson County 30 years ago, it would not be the economic engine that it is today. And what they have done for Wyandotte County is basically capped us at a poverty level of spending. It is not that we're spending too much in Wyandotte County, it's that we are undervalued. And raising the value of our community, we're about to do a $25 million redevelopment of Leavenworth Road. My expectation is all the properties around Leavenworth Road are going to increase in value because of the quality of that development and that infrastructure that we put in. By this tax law's definition, we're not able to capture that value of our own property increasing based on our investment, because the properties that are increasing are not new development. So even though we invest in our infrastructure and it raises the valuation of our community, we can't capture that value by this tax lid. And we're doing exactly what we should be doing, investing in the infrastructure of our community. And so in terms of the messaging, capping Wyandotte County at a poverty level of spending with this tax lid is inexcusable in terms of us being able to provide the quality of life for our citizens that other people want. And even in a year, wouldn't it be great if we had a 5% increase in valuation? I'm praying for that. I'm praying for 10, right? But say we had a 5% increase and we lowered our mill levy, but only lowered it 4%. To capture the additional 1%, even though we lowered taxes, we'd have to go to a vote. I mean, that's how unworkable and ridiculous it is. And that's what Johnson County did through the years. The valuations went up. They lowered the mill levy a little bit, but captured the valuation. Lowered the mill levy, captured the valuation. If we're not able to do that, that's exactly what we should be doing to lower our tax rate in this community and make us more competitive. They've capped us from being competitive. And that's the part that is infuriating about this tax lid. So full repeal, yes, absolutely yes. Going to a protest petition would be a much better solution in terms of just a workable piece that would give the people checks and balances beyond the election. But really, it's a very untenable process for us right now. Representative Wolfmore?
Thank you, Mayor. And just to add on to that, I was going to mention another topic is the really sad thing is the real reason this even came up in the State House this past year is so they could use it as a political weapon. They were more concerned that they would get reasonable legislators like those in this room who choose to support their local government and will vote against such a thing. So then they could use it against you in an election and say, your representative doesn't support lower property tax. So that's how ridiculous the state legislature has become when they use their power for political reasons instead of support your local governments or to pass reasonable legislation. So, but the point I wanted to bring up in case people aren't aware, I know you have mental health and jail beds on your agenda, which I think is very appropriate. Kind of disturbing news that you might have read about. The state has issued an RFP for privatization of Osawatomie, and we're already very, very short of mental health beds. In fact, law enforcement can often, or emergency rooms can often not get a bed available to transport a person who's involuntary who needs to go there. It's been a really, really at a crisis point, and so now they've issued an RFP for privatization, and at this point we understand the only people that are interested are out of state for profit. So the concerning thing is that there's already not enough money in the mental health system, so if you're for profit, you're obviously going to have to take out money for that profit. So the silver lining, though, if there is one, is that to do this, we put in statute last year that it takes legislative approval. So at least they cannot do this without legislative approval, but still it's disturbing. Be aware of that, and if you have a chance ever to speak up or speak out about that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
That's great. Yes, Commissioner Bynum.
I just wanted to ask Representative Fraunfelter, so you're going to try again on the abandoned housing? Yes. And do you feel like things might look better or no?
With the number of new people, I don't have a count right now where they're at. With last year's in the Senate and the House, I had a pretty good unity, even with a lot of people on the, well, it's obviously on the Republican side to pass 32 to 8 and 90 to 35. With 53, you said, Mike, 59?
59.
New people, I have no way to wage whether they're going to be receptive or not. Now, I feel that it's a little more moderate, so there probably won't be the strong right side that says property rights owners and all that stuff like American for Prosperity and that. But last year's bill, CLEAR came out, which is a Republican organization, said it was not only stronger on the front end on property rights than the original bill is right now. So it was just a political maneuver by the governor. Right, that's all it was. I mean, I think it's got a good chance of passing both. I can't speak for the Senate that passed there last year, but I think it should have a pretty good chance of passing again.
I agree with you, and I think since we started this effort, it has grown. The city of Topeka is huge on this issue, the city of Wichita, and what we found is it's not just an urban issue. There were towns of 500 people when we did surveys that said we have 500 residents and we've got 50 abandoned homes in our community. it became a statewide issue. So I'm optimistic that we can get it done again.
All right, I don't see anyone else. Yes, Representative Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. As we look at, and I go through this deal about the Medicaid expansion, kind of jotting down some of the people who have enrolled in Wyandotte County. And Mike, you stated that the ACA statewide is 25,000. Mayor, I didn't get the amount written down from Wyandotte County residents who now are insured. Can you give me that figure? Do you have that?
4,000, I believe, is the number we have right now who have received insurance, but it represents about a third of the people who are uninsured.
And to key along that and follow that up, I was reading about the Wyandotte County health outcomes recently. We're in bad shape again. We've been since, I can't remember, since Mayor Reardon.
2009.
Correct. And what, can you give me a briefing on what's happening, what are we doing in Wyandotte County to focus on, along with infant mortality, health outcomes? We discussed that at our dinner the other night at the Med Center or the hospital. I'd like to know what the UG and what our health department and how we can partner, if anything.
I would say Healthy Communities Wyandotte is doing a lot, and I would defer to the mayor because.
So Healthy Communities Wyandotte is one of my 3 priorities: economic development, innovation, healthy communities. Healthy Communities Wyandotte is now an organization of over 100 different organizations partnering together in 8 different areas. They include communication, education task force, a task force on access to healthy food, access to healthy infrastructure, access to health care. We have a tobacco cessation group now that we passed. We were the first city in Kansas and partnered with Kansas City, Missouri to do it on the same day to pass Tobacco 21 to get tobacco out of the high schools. We also have an advocacy group that's primarily working on Medicaid expansion. So those are 7, actually. I said 8. There's 7 task forces that are actively working, and we have several commissioners here. I know Commissioner Bynum, Commissioner McKiernan, Commissioner Johnson are all engaged in Healthy Communities Wyandotte on the various work levels that we're doing. We have an active infant mortality task force that has been working for the last 1.5 years since the data came out, that's doing a case-by-case study of how we're losing infants and what can be done in terms of prenatal care and postnatal care, post-birth care for the mothers and the families to identify how this is happening. And we know that our minority groups are hit much higher, and there's a direct correlation to the loss of infants with the lack of health care, that people simply don't have health care to take for themselves or for their children. So there's a lot of work going on. That group has leveraged over $8 million in grants. The most recent has been a $2 million grant from United Healthcare that is for health workers that are going door to door to help people with the new Affordable Care Act to actually help them use it. Because a lot of people have insurance for the first time and they've never used it. They don't have a primary care doctor. They've never been for an annual checkup. You know, we have people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who have never had an annual checkup, men and women. But now they have health care that's covered 100%, and so we have health workers from the Community Health Council actually going door to door to get people doctor's appointments with their new insurance. So there's a lot happening. We're still ranked last. I mean, the bummer is we just enrolled 1/3 of the people that didn't have health insurance. We're still last in the state. And the correlate, Commissioner McKiernan has done a ton of work on this about looking at the correlates. The top 2 correlates for poor health in Wyandotte County are unemployment and children in poverty. Creating jobs, good paying jobs for people, getting them connected, and one of our challenges is housing. We have some deplorable housing that's geared towards the unemployed. We get people a job, we do our workforce development work and get them a job, they take their first paycheck and move somewhere else. And then we have housing that attracts another person without a job. So we've got to have affordable workplace housing, quality housing. This is what Fraunfelter's bill is working on, is helping us get those properties in our hands before they're completely dilapidated and have to be torn down, get them into the hands of a not-for-profit that's going to turn them over and put them into good use and make it a good livable house. So it's all hands on deck for Healthy Communities Wyandotte. We have a lot of enthusiasm. Obviously, Joe Reardon started the initiative as mayor, and we are continuing to try to take that even to another level in terms of getting a healthier community. But socioeconomics are the #1 driver, and pervasive poverty has got to be addressed if we're going to be healthier. So there's a ton of stuff going on, and I would be glad to get you the latest information. Everyone on our delegation, I'll send out the latest information on Healthy Communities Wyandotte, because there's great stuff happening. And we're working with KU too, University of Kansas, to find additional, and the Lawrence campus actually, to look at additional metrics that we can measure the work that we're doing, because the county by county health rankings come out on a 2-year lag time, and they're comparing us to other communities in Kansas. Obviously, Johnson County is #1 in the state, and we're last. We need to have metrics where we compare the progress of what we're doing in our community and compare ourselves to other urban communities across the country, and not just to other suburban areas when we look at health outcomes, so that we can mark our progress and show that we are making progress, because we are, but it's not showing up in the health rankings because of the delay. So I appreciate your asking that question, because there's a ton of work going on countywide to make this a better place to live.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Johnson, did you have something else?
Yeah, so I'm just curious about Mike, you said something about the urban opportunity zones. Is that tied directly to the success of the Star Bond viability?
Not necessarily. No, we had proposed a year or so ago. Again, I worked with Wichita, Topeka, a number of other cities to try to introduce a concept of incentives for urban areas. You've heard of the rural opportunity zones.
Right.
We tried to get something moving in a similar capacity that would fit into urban areas, and I'll be honest, it was a little bit disappointing. It just didn't take off, but I didn't want to take it out, because I think there may be a possibility that we can craft together some package of incentives and other development tools that could work for urban areas. So I left it in,
Sure.
and it's kind of like, and it also.
Is there a champion for that? Is it on someone's desk? I mean, where do we stand with it?
I've had a lot of conversations with the Department of Commerce, some with the governor's office. I'll tell you who's very supportive, and we met, Greg Kendall with Wyandotte was involved in those meetings, the head of the chamber in Topeka, Kansas, and the city of Topeka, the Mayor Walgas's office was very involved in that. City of Wichita was very involved in their economic development folks. So you've got your larger urban areas that are very supportive of crafting something. It just kind of, with everything else going on at the state, just didn't get much traction. But we're not giving up on it.
Sure.
So.
All right. Well, I don't see anything else. I do want to thank you, you all, for being here, and I think this meeting is important and symbolic, because our legislators, we talk a lot about the Kansas legislature as a whole. We need to be clear that the legislators from Wyandotte County are working on behalf of our community and are doing the hard work to try to make our state a better place to live and our community a better place to live. So I just want to thank you all again for your hard work, for being here tonight, for the open lines of communication. That if there is anything that we can do to support you, I want you to reach out and let us know. Obviously, if there's something you can do for us, we'll reach out and talk to you. But we really appreciate the open dialogue and your leadership that you have. Tonight, we are going to conclude the televised portion of this, and we will eat here, but the televised portion of the meeting is over at this point, and then the televised portion will start again at 7 o'clock downstairs in the chamber. But we do have a meal for all of us in the side room, and we'll eat here and continue the fellowship. We'll eat in here, but the cameras will be off. I don't like eating. I don't like eating on camera because I have to sit like this. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and we'll be in break until 7 o'clock.